hate filming videos at this time of day, like on the weekends or something, because it's like where my window is, like it's like I have to sit in front of my TV so that I can use the window light, because otherwise just coming in like right here, it's terrible. So today we're going to talk about more modern horror and what's really worth it in terms of reading. I did a video similar to this one. I was talking about my mass market paperbacks that were worth it. And those ones were generally older. They're from like the 80s, 90s. I don't remember if I snuck Lord of the Flies in there, but I think I might have. This is more modern horror. And my stipulation for more modern was 2010 or later. Like, that's 15 years almost, which hurts my soul a little on the inside. But so that's about 15, almost 15 years of, time. And for what I mean by worth it, these are the books that I kept on my shelves. I read a lot of books, and I am very good at getting rid of books after I've read them. If I didn't absolutely love it, or if I think that there's somebody who would enjoy it, I can get rid of it pretty easily. But these are the books that I didn't do that with. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books here that I think are worth it. In terms of oh, wait. I just looked up and I see a number 9. Okay, so these are in reverse alphabetical order because I just pulled them from my bookshelf. And so the first book I'm going to talk about was published in 2019. This was a bit of a TikTok thing when it comes to the TikTok horror community. They really jumped on this book, and I jumped on this book because I was interested, and it is fucking worth it. I'm talking about Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli. And this is about a girl who is kind of known in like true crime circles because when she was a baby, her father snapped and killed her entire family and then himself. And then they found her, this baby in a high chair, and she's known as like Baby Blue, I believe. Right? Baby Blue? Baby Blue, because that was the song playing on the record player when they found her. And so it turns out that she ends up moving back into this house because it comes up on the market, and she's going nuts. There's stuff going on. There's people from her past. It was so good. It was so good. I read this, I think 2 years ago. No, just last year, last April. And it's creepy. It's weird. It's gory. The plot twists are nuts. There's some ghost stuff going on. No, this one got a lot of buzz, and I honestly think it deserves it. I think it's a good time. All right, this next one is a super recent release. This came out last year in 2023, and I read it last year in 2023. And this author is well known, but not for horror. This author is well known for his almost parodic, erotic short stories. And of course, I'm talking about Chuck Tingle, Camp Damascus. So Camp Damascus is about conversion therapy, basically. That's what it's about. It's about conversion therapy. It follows this girl named Rose, and is her name right? Is her fucking name Rose? I feel like her name is this. This is the horrors of reading 500 books a year, is that you think you know, but like you don't remember if you actually remember what everybody's fucking name is. I'm pretty sure it's Rose. Hear people in the hall. Either way, she's living in this small town, and it's very churchy. It's very Jesus-y. This book is very anti-religion, which I will always enjoy. And she's learning about this conversion therapy that's been going on. It kind of, and there's demons, and it's gross. And I've read a couple of Chuck Tingle's short stories, and I always thought that like these are way too fucking well written for what they are, and that carries over into this book. It's a good time. All right, then, coming out in, I believe 2017. Oh, 2021. Oh, geez. Came out in 2021. I read this book twice. It was beautiful and wonderful, wonderfully written, really just evocative, gross. I loved the relationships between characters. I loved the characters. Riley, in love. Summer Sons by Lee Mandello. Summer Sons was great. Like I said, I've read it twice. This book follows this boy Andrew, and he was in this kind of really gross, not gross, just this really codependent, homoerotic relationship with this other boy, who ended up going off to college, and they were kind of separated briefly, when the one went to grad school earlier than the other one did, and then he killed himself, the one who left, and so Andrew's kind of left to pick up the pieces, but he doesn't think that Eddie actually killed himself. He thinks that something else was going on, and just this, I cannot stress how fucking beautifully written this book is. It is gorgeous. It is wonderful. I like, yeah, and the characters, like I said, Riley owns my entire heart. I love Riley so much. The relationship between Andrew and Sam, who is another character in here. There's drag racing. Yeah, no, so good, so beautiful. After that, I couldn't not mention this author. It was like a question of which one should I pick to talk about. This one came out in 2021 as well. This author is huge in the horror world right now. Like, he is the big man. And it's like, you can't be, it's like you get born, somebody gives you this name with the PH, and you're gonna be a horror writer. I'm not talking about Stephen King at all in this video, because we're just gonna leave the King alone. Maybe one day I'll do like a redo of like my top Stephen King books of all time, but we're gonna leave the King alone. I'm talking about Mr. Graham Jones, Mr. Stephen Graham Jones, and I talk about My Heart is a Chainsaw. Really, you could extend this to also include Don't Fear the Reaper, which was like my second favorite book of last year. My first favorite book is also in this stack, and it might be controversial calling my first favorite book a horror novel. Anyway, you could also talk about The Only Good Indians, which was fantastic. The Only Good Indians was my first Stephen Graham Jones novel. But there's something about My Heart is a Chainsaw. Like, you can tell that this man loves horror. Like, just with the depth and the knowledge that he presents about the genre through the character of Jade is insane. This book also made me cry in one page. Like, I was reading it and I was fine, and I read the last page and then I was bawling. And when I read the sequel, the exact same thing happened. Like, this book was nuts. So much was happening, and then it wasn't what you thought, but then it was what you thought, but in a different way, but it was also something else, and it was wonderful. It was so good. I know some people have some issues getting into Stephen Graham Jones's writing, and I think there is definitely a kind of style of writing that you do see a lot of the times with Native American authors. There is. You see it a lot with like Louise Erdrich and stuff like that too. And I've read a lot of her because she's from North Dakota. So we support our own. And I think that's what it is. It's good though. It's a good style of writing. I know. I think it flows nicely, and I love it. And I'm so excited for the third book in the series. All right, after that, I've got a book that I was kind of not sure if I was going to put on here because I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep it. But this was a good book, and I think I would be remiss not to talk about it. This came out in 2022, and I've followed the author on Twitter for a lot longer than for a while before I picked up his book, because he was talking about people. Like, his 1-star reviews were because there was profanity and it was too gory, and I was like, I love profanity and gore, so let's talk about this. That's The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias, and this is good. I mean, it's a good book. I don't think it's one of my favorites. I give it, I think, 4 out of 5 stars. I'm pretty sure every other book I've talked about I have given 5 out of 5 stars. This one I gave 4 out of 5. It does have some scenes I'm always going to remember, like that crocodile. I'm gonna remember that crocodile. And it did make me kind of sad at the end. Like, it was kind of, like, this was a depressing novel. But no, I think it's worth it. I don't think it's quite at the level of some of the other books I've talked about, but I think it's good. So I figured I'd jump in here. Okay, this next one. This was my favorite book of 2023. And you could make an argument that it's not actually horror, but I would make an argument back that most of what this man writes is horror. I think I've read 3 of his books. Only one of them I would consider not horror. And I know of one of his other books that is people do peg as horror, and I want to peg this one as horror too because it's really fucking gross in a lot of ways. So I do honestly, you might call this literary fiction, but if you do, that's because you don't want to accept that it's a horror novel. I'm calling The Shards a horror novel. On the back here, Book of the Month called it literary fiction. Do we remember what that kid's body was like when they found him? This book is a serial killer novel. It's so good. Bret Easton Ellis, I have just accepted, is like one of my favorite authors of all time. the other two books by him that I've read were Less Than Zero, which I don't consider a horror novel, and Glamorama, which I do. And the only reason Glamorama is not on this list is because it came out in the 90s, and that's not modern enough. But this is a fictionalized autobiography of Bret Easton Ellis following his senior year in high school. And there's this new kid, and he is obsessed with this kid because he thinks that this kid is the one who's brutally killing all these people. And it is also about Ellis kind of accepting his own sexuality in a world, because he grew up in like Los Angeles, where it's like a quiet secret about a lot of people, but it's not really accepted. And throughout this entire book, he's like, every time he has sex with his girlfriend, he's thinking about how much she wishes that she was a man. Literally every single time. I consider this a horror novel just because of what happened to that poor kid. What's his name? Matt. This was my favorite book last year. I'm pretty sure his name was Matt. And it was a kid that Bret hung out with a lot. They had sex a lot. But I just when I'm thinking about that, and there's a pretty clear like psychotic break that Ellis goes through in this, and I'm counting this as a horror novel. You can be as self-important as you want and call this literary fiction. And I think Ellis does that too. I think he's kind of self-important about saying that stuff is literary fiction, but he's down here with the rest of us. He's just a more marketable Clive Barker. That's all he is. Yeah, no, I love this book so much. It was my favorite book last year. Okay. This next one is another one where it's like, is it a horror novel? I don't know. But I'm going to count it as a horror novel because there's a lot of murder. There's a lot of murder. And this one fucked me up. I'm not going to lie. It came out in 2022. And that is Devil House by John Darnielle. This was one of my favorite books of 2022. I think it was maybe my third or fourth favorite book. I know my first favorite book was Glamorama, and I think my second was The Winners, and I think this might have been number 3. This is about a true crime writer who is really obsessed with this like house that supposedly had so much scary stuff happening, Satanism, like satanic panic stuff going on. I count it as a horror novel just because of all those influences. I don't know if you really want to call it a out and out horror novel, like a slasher situation, but not all horror novels are, you know, this. So it's like, I don't know, but I'm counting it as a horror novel. I am, and this book really just kind of tore out my heart. I'm not gonna lie. It really just emptied out my soul, just scooped it all out and just left it in a neat little pile for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I think it's better to go in this one kind of blind. Then I've got one that is without a doubt a horror novel. This man is talked about sometimes when it comes to extreme horror, which I think does him a disservice. I have nothing against extreme horror, but I do think it is a weak imitation of splatterpunk. And I'm not going to call Aaron Beauregard splatterpunk. He's extreme horror. You know why? Because he's not a good writer. Splatterpunk had some pizzazz. Extreme horror is so fucking clinical. This book is not clinical. This book is gross. This book has that trope in it that always gets me, where a character thinks that there's something inside of them and starts carving at themselves with a knife. And that always gets me. It got me in The Ruins, and it gets me in this book. This book came out in 2014. It is one of the influences for my upcoming book, Guillaume. I'm assuming that the book is actually out by the time this video goes up, but I will for sure at least have the cover by then. It is compared to Lord of the Flies, and if there is any way to get me to pick up a book, it is to compare it to Lord of the Flies, because Lord of the Flies is my favorite book in the whole entire world. It came out in 2014, and of course I'm talking about The Troop by Nick Cutter. I haven't read anything else by Nick Cutter yet. I have, I think, all of his other books in the book wall. But The Troop, I love The Troop. Okay, so The Troop follows this group of Boy Scouts who they go on their like annual camping retreat to this island, but a guy crash lands on their island and he's got this parasite in him, and it's gross. It's super, super gross. They've got a fucking Roger on this island with them who is just like, I'm gonna use this parasite to kill people, and this is gonna be super fun for me. That's how he is. Fucking Shelley, man. And I kind of named a character in Guillaume after this one. It's not really, my character's Ephraim. It's named after Ephraim in this book because I love Ephraim. Ephraim is my favorite. No, this book was so good. It was so gross. It was really sad. It was tragic. It was so, I like, part of the reason I haven't read anything else by Nick Cutter is because I'm scared it won't live up to the Troop, because The Troop was one of my favorite books. And like I said, it gets talked about a lot when people talk about extreme horror. And let me tell you that this is better than all of the other books that they're talking about when they're talking about extreme horror. Aaron Beauregard is gross, but his writing is mid. Who else? Mike Watson can't write worth a fucking damn. Who else? I'm blanking. But if somebody calls something extreme horror, for me, most of the time, that means that it's not good writing. That means that the author is so clinical and detached from the subject matter, because that's the only way that they can handle it. The only exception is when they're talking about the troop or things that should actually be classified as splatterpunk, like Richard Lehman. And not that I'm saying Richard Lehman's a fantastic, like, on the level of Bret Easton Ellis here. I'm just mostly saying that he at least has some emotions in there. I don't know. This is getting into my rant about extreme horror now. I'm just like, just let us fucking revel, you know? Like, that's the fun of horror, is the reveling. Anyway, I love The Troop. Okay, and then the one that I actually, like, popped up and went and grabbed, this one is one of those ones where it's like, is this a good book? No. Is it super fun? Yes. Yes, it is. I've read this book like 3 times. It's like one of my favorite books just because it's so fun. It's ridiculous. This is probably one of the ones that's closest to those mass market paperback ones, because most of those ones I would not call good. I would just call them fun. And a lot of these ones I would say, like, on a literary standpoint, good. Like, objectively speaking, The Shorts is a great novel. This book, not so much. It came out in 2016. Fantastic Land by Mike Bakoven. This is it's written in the style of an oral history through, like, transcripts of interviews, and it's about this giant hurricane that basically traps about, I think, like 300 or 400 employees in an equivalent of Disney World, and then they all go nuts and kill each other. Again, this is another one that got compared to Lord of the Flies, and again, if you compare books to Lord of the Flies, I'm gonna pick it up. Like I said, is it good? No way. Is it fun? Yes way. I love the concept. I love all this. I love the fact that, like, I just love the freaks mostly. I love the freaks. The freaks are my favorite. This is a fun one. This is almost like a bonus one, because it's like, am I suggesting that this is, objectively speaking, a great book? Absolutely not. No, it's not. It's not a great book, but it's super fun. This book was good enough that I read it for the first time on Kindle and I liked it. And so I bought it in paperback. And then I donated the paperback to this high school I used to work at, and then I bought it in hardcover, and then I reread it again, and I love it so much. It's so much fun. So yeah, these are the ones. These are the ones. If you want to look at some modern horror that's not Stephen King, these are the ones. If you want something that's more literary than horror, I wouldn't say that. If you want something that's got literary influences, this one, or maybe this one. If you tried to read extreme horror but found the writing really lacking, this one. If you like ghost stories, this is Ghost. If you want the new King, this man right here. And if you're looking for other stuff, you know, Fantastic Land, Devil Takes You Home, Camp Damascus, yeah, that's where we're at. That's everything. I'll talk to you later, and goodbye. Stay tuned. At some point, I'll probably do a Stephen King video at some point, talking about my favorite Stephen King books. Just because I've been talking about horror a lot, and I think I've been, like, purposefully avoiding him, because I do love Stephen King. I've been reading Stephen King since I was 12. His writing, it does feel like home to me at this point. Like, it's just like, this is very comforting to me, watching this child get eaten by a clown. But I just try to avoid him when I'm talking about horror in general, just because he dominates the genre, you know, like every year a Stephen King book wins the Goodreads Choice Award for Best Horror, you know. So yeah, that's all for today. I'll talk to you later, and goodbye. Maybe we'll do horror manga at some point. I read horror manga. Oh, let's bust out the Corpse Party. Hell yeah, I don't know. I'm done. Goodbye. Maybe I'll do a full video. I guess I'm not done. Maybe I'll do a full video someday on extreme horror versus splatterpunk, because I know I've touched on it a bunch of times in a bunch of different videos, but I do want to read more extreme horror before I do that, you know, because I've read some, and some of it's been better than others, and I really, really hate it when people put Exquisite Corpse in that box, because Exquisite Corpse is one of the greatest novels ever written, and it's not extreme horror. It's not, I wouldn't even call it splatterpunk. It's just fucking art. Anyway, goodbye. I'm turning this off.